So the title of today's class is, dude, you know what? The only reason I continue to teach, because I could have retired already, is because I just like making up titles to lectures, to classes. That's it. You know what I mean, bro? Like, is there any other reason to be alive? Just make up titles. So, anyway, today's called You Asked. All right, man. Next slide. These are some of the topics we've hit this semester. If you take a look at this. And, I mean, there are many more within these. Man, I don't know. There's so much that we've thought about, or lots of directions we've gone, and all the things that you've said, or that I've said, or somebody said, or talked about on the stream, or whatever it is. Hey, by the way, who are the two people who ate the silkworm larvae? Who ate the silkworm larvae? You did, and who else ate it? Dude, you did it? Dude, that video just like really went viral in Korea. It's got like, we're working on like 1 million views, so. The Koreans are inviting you over to eat silkworms, the two of you, so you're good to go. You got to eat them by the spoonful, though, man. All right, a big spoonful. Silkworm larvae. Hey, these are some of the topics, right? So here's what we're going to do today. So there are two ways you can do this. One, you can raise your hand. Two, you can log into the live stream. So, it's youtube.com/social19/live, and you can post your question there on the chat. But what I want to do is I want you to ask questions like that you still have about the class, and then somebody else in class is going to volunteer to answer your question. So somebody asks a question, and then somebody else is going to answer it. Is that cool? Someone's going to volunteer with the question, someone's going to volunteer to answer it. So G-Dog right here has a microphone. You can post a question in the chat if you hop on. And people in the chat, you can post questions, but they can't be too specific. You can't, be like really, it's got to be something, you can't ask a question, I don't know, whatever, I can't. Okay, we ready? Who's got the first question? First off, do we have one on the chat? And two, who's got the first question you want to ask? Who's got a question about any of these topics that are still out there that you want someone to answer? All right, man. Wait, do you got one?
Hello?
Dude, when you pass the microphones down, just turn it on before you pass it down the aisle. Does someone have a question?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, man.
Well, I had a question about the overall class that I don't know if someone else can answer. It's kind of more so you would answer. I was going to ask, do you feel like some of the discussion and what people say is a little bit flawed due to so many people watching them that sometimes it feels like what people really feel, they're almost scared to say, in a sense?
Dude, this is an awesome question. Yeah. Who wants to answer that? Like maybe someone who's volunteered already wants to answer. Like, do you feel like you want to answer it? Dude, come on up. If you answer, you're coming up to you're gonna take a seat on the. Yo, we need the next question too, by the way. So. All right, Doug. What's your name?
My name is Ethan.
Ethan. All right. Oh yeah, you volunteered early on, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
Did
on
you
the.
You get his question?
Yeah. I I think it is kind of flawed because, for instance, if you were like a racist, you could never broadcast that you're a racist in this class. I mean, you're being filmed and there's a bunch of people watching, so you don't want to be that guy. And I feel like if you have you have to dumb it down or like kind of censor it a little bit because you go too far and everybody dubs you a racist, which you may be.
So when you were volunteering, do you still have the microphone? You don't still have it up there? Can you give one back to him? The guy that asked the question.
Could you pass it back?
Do watch that microphone go back there, dog. And we have a second question? G-Dog? All right, bro, what do you think about his answer?
Like, I would agree. I think, like, if you even ask people around you or sometimes when discussion is going on, like, it definitely seems like people the same on social media where it's kind of like you definitely censor how you may feel because you feel that the overall society may judge you. And I know racist is kind of extreme, but even like when we did like the conservative versus liberal, it seemed like some of the conservatives, they just had trouble trying to find the right wording for certain things. And, you know, with a bunch of people kind of looking at you, it seems like there would just be flaw, even though maybe that's not, even if a majority of the class kind of may not agree with what's being said or thinks otherwise.
Yeah. Bro, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're thinking this along the same lines. Like, for instance, like the Middle Eastern conflict. I mean, some people genuinely just don't care. Like, it's too far away. I don't care what happens over there. But I don't think people would go that extreme if they were to give that opinion here, because there's a lot of opinions here. There's people that feel very passionately about it, and I feel like in the social media space or like, you know, whatever, the collective conscience, like what people are believing right now, you don't want to be that guy that's like, I don't care, people are dying. I really don't.
Even though everybody is. It may not be, you know, you might have your cause, but there are all sorts of other causes you're not thinking about or caring about, and
yeah.
So all of us are in that. Like, I don't care about those people over there. I care about these people over here.
Yeah, like if you were in Colombia right now, you wouldn't want to be saying like, I don't care what happens over there.
Yeah. Or the Rohingya refugees issue.
Yeah.
Hey, did you feel yourself when you were volunteering? Did you feel yourself being very aware?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Trying to stay in a lane.
Well, you weren't gonna give like the hottest takes that you could, or like any like crazy controversial take, because, I mean, there's a lot of people here that's being broadcasted. Everybody says, you know, digital footprint. I feel like people are pretty aware about that right now.
Yeah, and it's not good for me, by the way. I don't like it when somebody. It's not good. First off, this is a response to you too, bro. What we're trying to do in here is promote thoughtful conversation, really, and to show, like, hey, we can have a thoughtful, reasonable conversation about all sorts of things, right? So, like, it's not good if somebody steps over some kind of line, even accidentally, and then, you know, whatever, people get all, I don't know, whatever, they get all crazy.
Yeah, I feel like it was kind of a little bit like that as well with the when we had the Israel-Palestine conversation, and things were getting a little heated between the three volunteers, and I feel like people generally try to steer away from something like that.
Yeah, but even then, like, heated is, I would call it just passionate. You know what I mean? I mean, it's gonna be, you ought to be passionate about things that involve human life.
Yeah, and I used the word heated because it became very anecdotal, and people, you know, got upset.
Yeah, heated's the word that we use. All right, dude. All right, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, bro. Nice question.
Thank you.
Your name, by the way?
Joe.
Joe? All right, thanks, man. All right, man.
All right. Go right ahead. Yeah, it's on.
I kind of have like two questions. It's kind of like one going off of the other. But I think the first one for me, because The first one is like, have your opinions on anything changed like throughout the course of this semester from like talking?
Wait. Okay. Let me just sit. Let's go with that. Who wants to answer this question? Who wants to answer this? Anybody? Somebody. Let's start with that one, and then you can ask the second one. Who wants to come up? This is such a cool question, dude. Who raised their hand? Bro, dude. Oh my God, our silkworm larvae eating friend. And then you're going to ask your second question. Anybody else want to answer this too? You want to? You guys are rocking shorts today. All right, dude, have a seat.
Yeah, I'd say like my opinions have definitely changed, like not on anything like major, but I'd say like the major theme I've seen throughout the course is like you said, like sociology is all about like thinking outside the box. Yeah, I like definitely like think I've been like thinking outside the box a lot more after this course.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, like I'm from New Jersey. I'm Christian. Like I went to a Catholic high school. I come from like a family that like I get along well with. And I feel like this course has like helped me to think like outside of that. Like think of someone like from like another country. Like think of like someone from like another part of the world rather just like than in my own little box.
Cool. Yo, very cool, man.
Yeah, I would say my opinions have also definitely changed. I was raised Quaker, so I was already, I would argue, pretty open and tolerant of everything, because the main thing with Quakerism is you're supposed to be everyone's friend no matter what. And I definitely think a lot of my opinions have changed. I've become a lot more like lenient with perspectives. Like I'm no longer, it's just black and white. Every situation is sort of gray in that there's not really one right or not really one wrong.
Oh, man, dude. So you've been confused. Oh, that's what college should be about, right? You think you go to college to get answers, but you come into this class to get confused. All right, those are good answers, right? What's your next question?
So that question was like kind of for you, and the second question is like kind of going off of that. And I was just gonna ask like how you think that like if you were to allow like students that you bring down there to like know what they're, because I volunteered down there before, but I know like for my experience, like I wasn't allowed to know the topic beforehand. I didn't know if like you thought that like if you were to share the topic or like the topic of conversation with them, do you think that would like influence your opinions more? And that's like for Sam. Sorry.
Okay. You know what? So here, I'm going to let you guys, the two of you, answer that.
Yeah, I have an answer.
And here's the deal. No. Here's what I want to ask you. On next class, I'm going to answer some questions, but right now it's going to be you all. What do you think about that? Do you think?
I think it's better that like the students like don't know the topic, because yeah, then it shows it's like their authentic like viewpoint. Like they couldn't do any research. Like it shows that it's like their thoughts, and like no one's an expert. Like we're just like college students. We don't have like all the world's problems solved. So yeah, I think it's like better. I think it would be like worse if like people prepared, because then they could like research. Like it shows like what we're interested in and what we're thinking about
like
too.
If you knew that you were going to eat so.
Yeah, I'd be like, I might not want to volunteer now. Yeah.
You know, well, or you might have looked it up and you might have seen what it was, and it's much better just to see it in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and the silkworms were fire, by the way. I didn't get on video, but I had my own chopsticks and everything. But yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely better that it's a surprise, because then it's much more authentic. You don't have to like feel like you have to be politically correct,
Or know the answer.
That's like a big. That's kind of like an issue, I think, is that like you feel like you can't have debates anymore because you feel like you have to be politically correct.
Yeah.
Even if your opinion doesn't align with that, because I know a lot of my own personal opinions are not really politically correct.
Yeah.
But that's just my 2 cents.
That's big as a Quaker. Bro, we're G-Dog. How about this guy for speaking directly into the microphone, man? He wins the prize of the semester. All right.
Sure, why not?
All right. Do you have another question? Who's got the next question? All right, you're good. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Mom. Of course. Do we have one on the stream? We have what? You okay? You have a good one? All right, hang on. We're going to take one from the stream. All right, what do you got? Let's look. Dude, that's actually, what does, dude, is Taylor Swift good? No, hang on. I'm going to change this question. Is Taylor Swift good or bad for the culture? Yeah. How about that? Anyone want to answer that? That's actually a really cool question. Do you have an answer? Bad for the culture. Anyone want to answer that? Dude, you want to answer that? Dude, come on down. Dude, you're on, man.
It's on already?
It's on. What's your name?
I'm Derek.
Yeah. All right, so listen. Kaylee. I don't know. I think it's Kaylee. We changed the question for you, but what's your name? Derek?
I'm Derek, yeah.
Derek's going to respond.
I think she is absolutely helping the economy.
How so?
Because with her tour, she's bringing in a lot of people to stay at hotels, tourism. People are going to restaurants, stuff like that.
But wouldn't people do that anyway? They just wouldn't.
Oh, you should see the numbers, Sam. Let me tell you.
No, but people. But there's no. I got you. Wait, are you a Swiftie?
The biggest one in this room, without a doubt. Yes.
Dude, awesome, man. Wait, what's it mean to say you're a? We're gonna go in a different direction here.
All right.
Now I'm gonna ask the question. How'd you come to be a Swiftie?
The first song I've ever remembered knowing or hearing is "You Belong with Me."
Yeah.
So ever since then, since 2008, I've been a big fan.
And what makes her so much better than like Led Zeppelin?
I'm not gonna say she's better than anybody. To compare artists,
hang on.
that's
I'm
like.
gonna change that. What makes her preferable to Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath?
I mean, I think it's just personal preference.
Yeah.
I enjoy her melodies, especially her bridges. Those are pretty good.
And she writes her tunes, right?
She does.
Yeah. How is it for you being a guy who's a Swiftie? Do you like?
A lot of people don't think that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I feel like in comparison to a lot of other people, I do know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So you get sort of
Condescended to.
Condescended to because you're a guy.
Yeah, I would say.
Last semester we had a guy from Saudi Arabia who was the hardcore Swiftie in class, man. Remember him? He was an intense Swiftie, a Saudi guy.
We would be friends probably.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. All right, Doug. All right, thanks, man. All right, man. Derek, you got another one? All right, bro, you're on, man.
Okay. So I saw like on the big board there that like one of the original prompts was like punishment. I took that as like punishment. Like me personally, like when I was a kid, I was like a little shit. So I want to ask, like, what are our thoughts about like disciplining our kids? Because like me, like I said, I was hit because I was like I said, like I was a little shit, and I to be fair, I did deserve it. But I feel like I also like learned a lot, I guess, like from that. And whenever I talk to like foreign kids, like for example, in my friend group, we have like friends from like all over the place. Everyone agrees, like, yeah, like sure, like I kind of deserved it. But then again, I also like learned a lot from it, and like it does work to a certain extent. So like, what are our thoughts on that?
Dude, and there's a cultural piece here. Could somebody who comes from a culture where it's like really a little bit more, it's more okay to discipline kids physically? Dude, you want to take that one? All right, man. Dude, this is a really good question, actually. Because there's a huge cultural divide. All right, man, you're on.
So I
Minus of your name.
Oh, I'm MK, man Karen. I was up here like exam 1. So I come from Indian parents. They both immigrated here, so they still had that very much like that belief of discipline.
Uh-huh.
And so it wasn't to the extent of like beating us, but like slapping and that type of thing was like a lot more like it wasn't like
Wait,
out of
hang on. The Indian slap?
Yeah, like
And with the sandal too?
No.
Right,
It was
okay.
always the hand.
All right.
But for me, like, the one thing that I did realize, like, the older I got, like, maybe, like, my dad never hit me, but my mom sometimes did because
Yeah.
I was being a little shit. But I think, like, as I got older, one of the things that my parents really instilled on me was, like, doing the right thing because it's the right thing and not because you're afraid of being caught or being hit. So I guess it goes in, like following rules and laws. Like, you want to follow the rules because, like, you know it's the right thing to do, not because you're scared of jail.
So like that Social 120, the class knowing right from wrong would be really good for deciphering this.
Yeah, so I don't think you should I don't think there's any grounds to hit your child or, like, at least go overboard. Like, I understand, like, maybe, like, if you slap your child in, like a light, something like that, but I really don't understand the, backhand or with anything like that, just because I do know what that means, and I know what my parents have gone through and that type of thing, and I know that a lot of the things that how they were disciplined, it still follows them now, and they're in their 50s. So now that you see that, kind of realize that discipline is needed for any child, but you don't need to be hitting your child to instill discipline.
So you wouldn't hit your child?
No.
Like
No.
a little slap or anything?
Yeah, but that would be like the extremes of it.
Well, but that's hitting your child, a slap.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Okay, all right.
But I think anything beyond that is just very
All right,
extreme.
okay. All right. Bro, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah. So, like, what do you think is, like, too much? Because, like, for me, I don't want to say, like, I was abused either, because I wasn't. But I got hit with, like, almost everything under the sun. More so, like a wooden spoon, like a sandal, like belt. Like, my dad, okay, no, I'm not gonna share my trauma, but.
Also, it is a trauma.
I think for me personally, I think, like, the extent of if you were hitting a child would just be your normal, like, hand. But I think that's where I would draw the line, simply because, like, even when we're talking about, like, oh, like, what would be the extent of your willing, like, to go to? I mean, whenever we refer to anything beyond even, like, say, like, even a slap or, like, using, like, a shoe or, like, a wooden spoon or whatever, we always refer to that as our trauma or, like, something negative to that. So I understand, like, we can be like, oh, well, we turned out fine. Or, like, we turned out fine. Like, that didn't affect us. It's not fair to assume that every single person who's gone through something like that is going to be okay or is going to be all right. I think that's something that we've normalized. Like, in a lot of cultures, it is normalized. Like, I know it is in Indian culture, but that doesn't mean that it's 100% efficient or effective either.
Yeah, it's interesting for me to see these pretty significant cultural differences. Say and this is a class on cultural and ethnic differences, pretty significant cultural differences between people around the world and how they discipline kids. And to really kind of there are people clearly in this class who would say, dude, laying even a finger on a child is abuse, right? Our Quaker friend maybe, but you know what I mean? Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, so it's really interesting, huh? Okay, dude. Thanks, dog. Appreciate it. All right, dude.
So this is mostly for people, sorry, I'm sick. Mostly for people who volunteered. Going off of the question about, like, how us being live streamed on the internet affects what we say. For those who have volunteered, have the people who have been outside this room, like people who are watching the live stream and commenting, or like commenting on shorts, have affected you as a person or your views on other people? Or is it just me?
Wait, I asked that again. Wait, hang on one second. Hang on.
Have your view, like, so if you volunteered and you've seen the comment section of your video or have seen the live stream comments, has that affected you as a person or your views on other people that maybe conflict with the class that you were talking about or just conflict with your character in general?
Yeah, this is a cool question. Who wants to answer this? Oh, man. Wait, hang on. For you, for sure. And hang on, someone who... No, you gotta come up here.
How you doing? She, theys,
Yo,
those in
right here.
between. Men as well. How are you?
You were up here twice.
Yeah, I'm just that real. How you doing? Hey, Miriam girl. Nice to see you, IRL. How you doing?
So how about you?
And be so honest with you right now, I went to some of the shorts for some of mine, and I saw a comment when I was talking about my appearance, right? And they were talking about she's saying all this, yet she's dressed so masculine.
Wait, hang on. One comment?
Multiple. And it was from a black woman. That's why it like struck me the most.
It was a black woman.
It was a black woman who said it, and that's why it struck me the most. Because she was able to say that. Yeah, guess what her profile picture was? The Nubian queen, black queen. Yeah, the black queen with the wrap around her head that's usually red or sometimes gold, usually something to impact the black power movement. Yeah, she wasn't really about black power because guess what? Angela Davis dressed masculine and she did what? Was a revolutionary, and I love it.
But for you though, do you? So this isn't your first rodeo on social media though, right? That's not your first foray.
No, check me out from freshman year. The girl who said she got rejected, aka didn't really get rejected. I applied to the wrong pin.
Yeah. So you're.
Yeah, that's me. How you doing? Purple hat. If you ever see me. Teehee.
Wait, which one? You gotta know. I've been having problems with my earpiece. So wait, who's you? Who are you?
There was this TikTok on campus. You know those people who go around campus asking questions, and it's usually like trivia questions and schmitz like that. Well, I got them hoes right. They didn't show you that part. I got them right. I ate them hoes down real quick, easy. No sauce, no Santana. I ate that up. But right, and they were like, "What college rejected you?" And I thought in my head, well, multiple colleges rejected me, but I had to put in my moment that got me here. Guess what I did, y'all? Senior year, I was 17. I was stressing out. I had a breakdown. I did the usual. I cried while doing college applications. And as I was doing it, I realized I did not apply to the right pin. Yeah, I applied to the wrong one. And the reason I found out was later when I got the acceptance letter, and I was like, when the fuck do they have a lion for the damn mascot? That's a
the Quakers.
Exactly. I was like, aren't there motherfucking like Quaker Joes or something like that?
Dude, this is the problem with people in Texas. You know what I mean?
Not too much.
That's it. It's like Texas is the whole world. It's like, come on, man, Pennsylvania. We have Penn and we have Penn State.
Yeah, it's a common thing in multiple states where they have multiple names that sound the same.
I know. I'm just
TSU is Texas Southern University, Texas State University. Common occurrence, you know.
So listen, let me ask you this question. I want to go back to the other thing. So the comments. So you just go by them. Did you use those comments to go out and change your appearance and not dress so masculine because someone's asking that question, or like what did you like?
Look at me.
Yeah.
Did I? No, because guess what? She could either catch me in Texas, Penn State, South Korea, Japan, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Caribbean, Sierra Leone,
But do you make
Mozambique,
comments like that? Let me ask
and I'll
you
whoop
though.
her ass.
But do you
easily.
make comments on people's videos like that? Would you comment like that?
No.
Yeah, all right, that's good. I think the thing is, for me, one of the things that I'm always emphasizing is, when you have the experience of getting comments like that, then you should learn to not make those comments for other people. Like, it's like, why waste time? Like, why would somebody even waste time on that? You know what I mean? Like,
So I'm gonna say a phrase. Don't be saying this phrase loosely because I'm saying it to a black woman, but monkey see, monkey do. She most likely saw somebody else do it, and then proceeded to do it herself, thinking it was the right thing to do, like bullying little girls into being feminine, to not wear red, to wear like long clothes around men when they're at the house. That's that bullying that stopped like when they're at the house, and she somehow made that into her like internet thing.
Yeah.
Like, baby, if you have time to comment on my YouTube, the YouTube short, try to find out why you're lacking in some of them funds whenever you have to pay that food bill.
Dude, it's what you said when you were up here, which
What?
is like, just mind your own business, man. Watch the video, be entertained by it, and then move on.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. You have thumbs to scroll, not to type. If they were meant to type, they would have been doing it years ago, baby. They were meant to scroll. Thank you.
Dude, you're the best.
Sam, I'm be so honest with you right now. I appreciate you as a human being.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Human being.
You are awesome. Thank you. You were like, you were in such like such a difficult place.
Yeah, so
Wait, let me ask you a first question though.
Go for it.
Before you go. I'm going to ask a very specific question.
Yep.
Did you, I mean, you know, this, if we look at what's happening in Columbia and Yale and universities around the country, right? You know, the three of you and Ethan and Zoe came up and really took the hottest topic that's hot in the U.S., and you can't take any side without just getting hammered by other people, right?
I definitely know that. Yeah, you really can't say anything without anyone disagreeing with you.
Were you prepared for that?
Yes.
So you knew, like, listen, it doesn't matter what I say. There's going to be half the people are going to think I'm a lunatic, and the other half are going to like, yeah, you go, girl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to convince anyone to change their mind or just kind of like, you know, be like, yeah, you're right, whatever. Like, the point of this class is to kind of think outside the box and think more than what you've lived your entire life knowing. So hopefully I helped someone do that. I don't know. But what really got me was someone who commented that I threw a hissy fit. That wasn't very nice. I mean, yeah, I got emotional, but like, it is personal and it is emotional for me. So whoever said that I threw a hissy fit, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but like, it is emotional. And if you don't like that, don't watch videos that are emotional.
But how many? Yeah, for sure. Listen, that's why I don't read comments of any videos that I have. I don't read comments. I just don't. Right.
You probably shouldn't.
No, it's really best. And so for you, when you're young and you know, like, okay, I just got to scroll past those, right?
I mean, yeah, like, I did read most of them, and some people were like, oh my God, she's great, like, she's so brave, whatever. Some people were like, she's stupid.
Yeah.
And some people were like, these kids are, like, all of us, the three of us, these kids are dumb and they're uneducated. Yeah, I'm 22, like, I'm really
But other
not.
people were saying, like, these kids are amazing. Like,
Yeah.
they're so thoughtful.
Everyone
and
has different
smart.
opinions. I just, like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, have your opinion, but at the end of the day, we're 18 to 24-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like, we're really not that old.
Yeah.
Like, just be nice to each other.
You know, I had several professors who watched the stream from other universities.
Yeah, one of my professors came across the video. It was kind of awkward.
Yeah, and but I have not at Penn State, but at other universities and around the world. And several of them reached out to me and were like, man, I can't believe that you can find 3 students who are willing to have this conversation and really able to be really thoughtful about it. And so that's like,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All 3 of you killed it. All right.
Oh, is it on? Oh, I guess my question is, I remember you talking about assimilation a little while back. Sam, I think you remember me. Crap, I almost forgot it. And you said, oh wow, assimilation is really great. But like, what happens if it isn't?
Wait. So we have to, you're not asking me, you're asking someone in the class.
Like anyone, really.
Yeah, okay, hang on. Okay, this is a good question. What part of assimilation, of taking on somebody else's culture?
Should I elaborate a little bit on it?
No, I think I
Okay.
got it. This is a really good question. What part of just taking on somebody else's culture, like being part of that new culture, is not actually a good thing? Like, what part of that? There are a lot of people in here who have assimilated. Bro, you're on, man. What part of it is not good? What part of it is, like, you know, a little bit?
So this is my opinion, but I think that when it comes to like assimilation and what is, I guess, the negative side of someone getting into that kind of a situation, it's when you lose what makes yourself unique. I think I mean, at a certain point you lose a good bit of it in assimilating, but losing all of it, your own identity itself, and just completely becoming something that isn't really you is the part that I think is most troubling. Like, I mean, even within like U.S. culture, I'd say like, I'm sure like you're different than like, I don't know, like another white person in the room. Like,
Dude, I'm different than
like
every other white person. I was cracked from an egg, man.
Yeah, and then there's probably like similarities, like, I don't know.
But what do you do though? But how about though you lose parts of you, but you gain other parts, new parts of you? What about that?
I think that in that case, I mean, it could, I guess, become sort of like, I guess, the blending of a culture at a certain point. I mean, it might not be done the same way it was initially, like you might have intended it to become a part of your own culture.
But there is something, I hear what you're saying though, there's something about when you take on something from a different way of being, a different culture, whatever, you really do, you know, you lose. And there's something about like a personal, psychological, and social death that happens as you go through life, right? You'll experience it. As you get to my age, you'll look back and as you just age, you see that you're just constantly losing things. And it's just kind of, it sucks in a way, right? Because you're not the person who you were. So I see that. Do you have some people that you notice who really just give up? Have you seen people who just gave up their entire culture and just became something else? Do you have any examples of that?
Wait, can I answer that? Or?
Yeah.
I guess I could say like as an Asian person who's adopted and grew up in like the white community, so like private Catholic school, I went through a lot of shit. You can see it a lot in like Asian stories you see online. They'll be like, oh, I got criticized for being Korean or Chinese, so I went all American, and now they like can't speak their native language. Or just people not. Anybody who's been adopted cross-culturally or cross-nationally. Yeah, you really, there's something, there's an essence, right? Yeah, I hear that.
I was going to say, I think in terms of like people I've met, like in my high school, I went to like a really multicultural high school, and there I think, despite it being like such a diverse place, like I think it was probably like the most diverse school in the U.S., and I think there were a lot of people that like chose like consciously to not showcase that because of like a fear of, you know, either upsetting someone else in some way, or really just not wanting to have to deal with like explaining the difference that is associated with that group.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. That's cool. Dude, have you been invited to any of the Chinese student organization gatherings yet?
Yeah.
Did you speak Mandarin?
Yeah.
Dude, seriously? Oh man, you're the best. Awesome. Man, how'd it go?
Pretty good.
Did they give you a rounding ovation? Yeah? All right, man. Well, you got to go. Don't forget Chinese students. That's your student body president right there. He speaks Mandarin. Bring him out. You have a question?
So answer like that question.
You want to answer the question?
Yeah,
That question? All right, go ahead, man. Here, just pop up here really fast. And then we're going to go to the next question. G-Dog, you have another question? All right, man. Hang on, bro.
Something to add onto that question is like when you grew up in a different culture and then you move like sort of around a young age to another culture.
Like you were 16 when you
15,
right?
yeah.
15?
Yeah. You kind of start questioning yourself and your identity because I mean, I guess if you like move when you're already old and you have your own sense of identity, it's kind of different. You already kind of know who you are and you've discovered
Yeah.
yourself. But when you grew up somewhere and then you're still young and you move somewhere else, you kind of have that divided identity, and you, like when you still know people from back then and you start noticing the difference between you and them, you kind of start asking yourself, who really am I?
Dude,
And
this is a thing here, right? So like you were from the DR, right?
Yeah.
And you came here. You didn't speak any English?
I know English, but it wasn't like I spoke it. I just know English because my mom knew English. She knew that it would be beneficial to me to know.
So you then have people. Do you go back to the DR?
Yeah.
And do people say like, "Oh my God, you've changed"?
Yeah.
And like, not for the better.
Yeah, not for the better. Like sometimes,
Yeah.
like let's say, because it's like there's a lot of crime in the country and stuff, and I'm like, sometimes when I go out, I notice myself like getting really scared when I'm around out in the streets and stuff, and they're like, "Come on, dude! Like that security over there in the U.S. got you scared now, walking around the streets."
Right. So then then you get made fun of. Like somehow
Yeah.
you gave up what was this part of this really cool culture and this really cool pace, and people then translate into you probably thinking you're better than them.
Yeah. They also think sometimes that I think I'm better than them because I live in the U.S.
Yeah.
And like, I have certain, like sometimes I get people telling me like, "Oh, you think you're better than us because you go to a university in the U.S. and we're down here. We're like we're not able to take advantage of your opportunities." And
Yeah.
stuff.
Wait. Are you a freshman?
I'm a junior.
Junior? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's intense. Yeah, I see that. Yeah. All right, dude. Thanks, man. All right. All right. Bro. For the class, right? Remember, it's for the class.
Yeah.
All right.
So this is kind of like in regards to like the military and like the hairstyles, and there was talks about that being like about culture. Basically, for anybody, I would like to ask like why they think that's about culture, and should culture be talked about in the military?
Should you wait? This is a really. Do we become? Should the military, people in the military, be one singular culture, or should we embrace? You like have the culture of the military, right? You got to do your job, etc. But should we also embrace these cultural differences between people? That might not be Does anyone want to answer that question? That's a really tough. Do you want to answer that question? Oh man, awesome. All right. I was thinking no one's gonna try to take this one on. I could talk about this quite a while actually. Awesome, man.
Hi, Mackenzie, my family. So my mom's boyfriend, he's a vet of the Navy. My cousin is currently serving in the Navy, and my granddad's an Army vet for Korea. So I believe the way my cousin explained it to me, because a lot of times we'd always question him about like what's happening on the boat, or like we even questioned my mom's boyfriend because he was nice enough to give my cousin advice before serving to the Navy. He would give him advice on like what to do, what's the best way to keep yourself like sane even. But I would ask him about certain things, and he said like when they're on duty and they're on the boat, you're kind of all one culture at the time, because you're just worried about like being together, being able to run the ship, being able to do everything. So it's a little bit like, best way to explain it, it's like a college. He's like, Penn State is a culture, the military is a culture, but everyone else has their own individual cultures within a community that's shared.
Well, it would be like here at Penn State, some of the sports teams, let's say.
Yeah, exactly, like a sports team.
Yeah.
So like, I'm a New Yorker, I'm a Yankees fan, maybe controversial, many Mets fans, but like I share a culture with many other people because that's one aspect of my life. It's not every aspect of my life though.
Yeah, I got that. Yep. So therefore, the answer would be if you push it too far, and I don't think the military does, but if you push it too far, and then the things start to fall apart, because then we start to create these divisions that don't exist, that shouldn't exist, or that actually get us into trouble. Yeah. Yeah. All right. That's cool. Awesome answer. Thanks, man. All right, man. Who's next? Do we have one from the stream? What's the biggest paradigm shift you've experienced this semester? Yo, who wants to do that? What's the biggest paradigm shift you've experienced this semester? Listen, Tyler B. Everyone's right now is asking, what's a paradigm? Okay. You know, like where your mind just went in a totally different direction. Do you have one, Zoe? All right, man.
All right. Hi, I'm Zoe. I've been up here before. I would say that for me, wait, I'm too short to sit on this table. God. Okay. For me, like, not complete paradigm shift, but after Bossum came in, I was kind of like, I can't live in this country anymore. After hearing what our military did to his family, because I feel like I just didn't know. Like, I knew about the messed up stuff that the U.S. military has done, but, like, I feel like I was pretty young after 9/11 and just in the wake of all that. So I guess, like, I just didn't know enough about it. And, I mean, I'm someone that gets frustrated with our country a lot and our government a lot. And I've said, like, I'm a crim major, so I want to go into law, and I'm planning on going to law school here. And so, like, how do I move abroad if I want to be a lawyer here and I'm studying, like, American criminology and American law?
Well, you can go to law elsewhere.
Yeah. But, like, last night I was looking up, like, how do law degrees work in Spain? Because I studied abroad in Spain.
All right.
And I think after hearing Bassam's story, I was just like, I don't know. There's so much that this country does that I just can't support, and I just don't want to be here.
You know, one of the things that I you know, like life, I'm going to say something about me quickly, and you can respond.
You go
to
for it.
I oftentimes at this point in my life, I can't talk in here about many of the things that I know. Because if I did, I wouldn't be able, I just couldn't keep coming in here. I couldn't do it. And so there's so much, when you say so many things that the country does, and you know, when you're the most powerful country in the world, people have the idea that you become the most powerful because all these amazing things you do. Well, you also become the most powerful because all the not amazing things you do. And so, it's really difficult. And so what you're saying, I guess what I want to say to you is, we could have days and days and days of things that would just be kind of mind-blowing. But
yeah, like after the reading that we did for the one exam about like the coups across different countries and the US's role, I was like, wow, I feel like I didn't know much about that. I was just like, how? I don't know. There's just so many things that the US has done abroad, and also like in the US. Like I'm always saying, I want to have kids one day, but I don't want to raise kids here because like I don't want to feel like I need to buy my kids bulletproof backpacks to feel safe sending them to school. So like there's so many issues in the States where I feel like, how are we doing this to people that live in our country and who are coming to our country for a better life? And then how do we do things to people abroad? And then treat people that come here for a better life because we've ruined their life in their country. It's just, yeah.
That's a question, man. So that's a paradigm shift. That's a big paradigm shift. Awesome. Yeah. Yo, very cool. Yeah, awesome. That's cool.
It's not a paradigm shift. It's not a question. I just want to answer one of the questions of that, if that's possible.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually thought the exactly same from Zoe. Actually, I was in the culture tsunami. Was that right? As
Wait,
a newcomer.
Can you just come up here really fast? Hey, someone else up there had a. Here, you can use that mic.
I don't want to talk that long.
Okay, okay. Yeah. It's on.
Okay. Okay, I was in the video of the cultural tsunami as a newcomer of this country, and I'm an exchange student. So I'm not graduating here at Penn State.
Yeah.
I'm from Songyunghwan University, aka SKKU, and I just came to Penn State just because to learn cybersecurity as an information science major. In SKKU, we don't have a strong cybersecurity courses that could actually educate me as a cybersecurity expert. So that was the main reason I wanted to learn here, and I was really, really ready to get racist and get discriminated by my race, because basically I'm a minority here, right? But when I came here, as the time I'm leaving at May, I told you about it, and
Are you coming back in the fall?
no,
All right.
maybe
I'll
not.
see you in Korea.
Yeah, cool. So what I kind of thought was being diverse isn't that bad. I mean, I thought I'll be the one of the minorities, one of those who are getting discriminated, and I need to get along with my race, which I can't change, basically. But I saw a lot of people here, and when you look around, I see a lot of people from all different ethnicities, all different places. And they know how to respect me. I mean, you guys know how to respect me as a South Korean, as an Asian, and mostly as a student, especially as an undergrad student, like one of you guys. So I actually thought, I've never thought of living the country in the future, right?
Yeah? Of living here.
Of leaving South Korea, because
Okay.
health insurance here is way higher than
Yeah,
South
yeah,
Korea,
yeah,
right? And I kind of thought that it would be okay for me to have kids around here, and maybe, I don't know if I want to marry with American person or something, but if I have a kid and if I have a chance to educate my kids, I think having my kids around this country and in a diverse culture would broaden their sights, visions. I actually broadened my vision a lot here, because I actually thought of being a racist, even myself, for having a bad, not bad, but being all those white people, if that's the right word, or other race people.
When you thought about being discriminated against here in the U.S., were you only thinking white people, or were you thinking other black and brown people too?
Everybody except, not even except Asian, like except South Koreans. I thought everybody would be kind of recognize me as a different person, because I know I do have those Asian accents, and I'm not very fluent in English and stuff. So
Yeah, you're not fluent at all in English. Yeah,
No.
your
Yeah.
English is pretty bad. So
That's
listen,
it.
so we had this conversation with you. So the idea is, so you found people to be really welcoming.
Yeah,
You haven't
it
had
was
any
a
negative
welcome.
experiences.
Not at all. And especially one of the big things about having a kid and living here is this accepting culture. And getting to know other people without a strong vision. So, and I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure there are a lot of supports from both of my South Korean country and United States. And I thought it would be kind of cool.
Dude.
And I'm kind of thinking of coming back in the future, maybe.
Yeah? Awesome, man. All right, you'll come back. Zoe, you'll leave. She'll take your place. Bro, we have a question? Here, you can take. All right, go ahead. Yep.
It was less of a question and more of just like a thought about, sorry, I forget her name, but the girl that was up there talking about how she wanted to leave America because of the issues here, which I completely respect and understand. I just think that it's an interesting kind of like difference between when you're looking at people from other countries who are like, you know, risking their lives and dying to get to America, that it's like kind of that grass is always greener on the other side mentality.
Yeah.
That I don't know, like obviously we have our problems. There's a lot of things about this country that I would love to change, but also I think that it's important to just not take for granted some of the things that we do have here. And it's completely, you know, valid and respectable to want to leave if that's something that you want to do better for your life. I just think that it's kind of important to look at like the people who are looking at us in awe, saying, oh my God, you get to go to Penn State, you get to do this, you get to do that.
I think, I'm with you on that. I think there's a thing that each of us kind of have, that there's like this kind of level of tolerance and understanding, you know, and I have it. I'm watching it in myself all the time. The things that I can find okay, acceptable, I can just sit with, and the other things that I can't. And it's very. But once you open your eyes to certain things, it's like, man, if some of you knew, so I'm going to go to that coup thing. Man, sometimes I'd like to just say some of the things that I know, and I just can't, and I don't, and I just let it go. But if you knew, it's just it's mind-blowing. But yeah, thanks for your response. Yeah. Somebody else, do we have another question up here? G-Dog, you have another question out there? Do people worry that with the U.S. committing billions to Ukraine and supporting Israel will open the U.S. to more terrorist risks or even a new war? Does anyone want to take this on? Do you think about this? How often do you think about it? This might be... Dude, you want to take this on? You think about it? All right, awesome. There's something about you, man, that you just seem like such a nice guy. Are you a nice guy?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah. Does he seem like a nice guy? Like, when you volunteered before, I was just like, I want to be your friend. So, like, okay. All right, go ahead.
That's very nice of you.
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about, like, the U.S. military, like, spending money on, like, especially foreign aid, so... I know Ukraine's been like massive recently. There's like something like a $14 billion bill, to provide aid at least to Ukraine, and you see a lot of hate for it, especially online. So when I like go through Instagram comments, especially, it's like you could have spent this money inside the States, like when the Hawaiian fires happened, and like other domestic crises, and like to spend the money inside, and like personally, like my opinion at least is, while that is true, that money especially, so especially speaking like Ukraine and like Israel, in Ukraine especially, you're supporting the state against Russian like imperialism, and on top of that, all that money goes to arms manufacturing within the state.
Yeah.
We're replacing our own munitions in the country while sending them the old stuff that we have in stockpile.
Yeah, so listen, I'm not a person that supports the military industrial complex and sending weapons around the world.
It is incredibly advanced though in the States. They've got it down to a T.
Dude, we're amazing. The vast majority of the aid to Ukraine, to Israel, to all foreign aid is tied. It's called tied foreign aid, and it's tied to the United States. So it's things that are made here. When we send grain to, to Malaysia, let's say, like after a flood, or the Philippines, right? The grain is grown by U.S. farmers and paid for by U.S. tax dollars to those farmers. And so all that money stays in the U.S., and then we ship the grain on U.S. shipping transport ships. Right, it's loaded by Americans. It's on U.S. transport ships, and it's generally unloaded in a port of entry by an American company. So, like,
it's definitely a win-win.
We get the money back. It's just we pay taxes and we get it back. So.
It just gets recirculated in the economy, and they get a benefit too. I mean, if they really need the help.
Which is kind of interesting that people don't see that, right? Okay, so that's how you take that.
Yeah, there's also been like great positives, like especially like U.S. funding to Israel with Iron Dome. That was a big thing. I think there's a couple $1 billion given, and it's super effective. It's like 99% efficacy of like.
So when you think about U.S. maybe inspiring more terrorist risks here, do you think about that?
There's definitely a risk taken, but I don't think it's exacerbated with the aid.
Okay.
Just that people hate America in the first place, anyways.
Dude, most people
no
don't
amount
hate
of funding is going to change it anyway.
People who hate America, yeah.
Yeah,
right,
no amount of funding is going to change it. Even if one day you decide just to stop it all, they're still going to chant death to America. They're still going to try and bomb places. They're going to try something.
I think there's a phrase, haters gonna hate.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Okay, dude, thanks, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Do we have another one? Who wants to ask the final question? Dude, do you have a final question?
So I want to ask.
Do you have a question? Wait, hang on.
No, it's okay.
Do you have a question? You yourself that you want to ask a student in the class? You want someone in the class to answer?
I'll do it if you don't want to.
So much pressure.
What? You don't have one?
I'll go. So lately there's been a lot of movements in an attempt to conglomerate different cultures into one, in an attempt to reduce segregation between different cultures.
All right, so have like a big culture.
But if that were to be the case, wouldn't that ultimately kill the diversity of the cultures by making into this one amalgamation of big culture? Yeah. And would that be beneficial in the long term, do you think?
Oh my God. Does anyone want to answer that? I can answer it. Do you have a quick answer to it?
Just state it.
Well, I just want to say something real quick because it's been bothering me. Like, it's on, right? Yeah. It's been bothering me for a really long time, but like, the Middle East is split into, I guess you could say, like the Gulf, the Levant, and North Africa.
Yeah.
And a lot of people from North Africa don't consider themselves Arab, but some of them are.
Yeah.
And some people from the Levant don't consider themselves Arab, they consider themselves European.
Yeah.
And some people from the Gulf are, well, the Gulf are, they're the true Arabs, that's what people say. Which really pisses me off because, like, I'm from Palestine and my family friends, like, we have Lebanese, Syrian, Jordanian, whatever. And we share like a lot of the same culture, even like Iraqi friends. And it's just like, why is it such an issue to be like, oh, you're Arab, I'm Arab, we're all Arab, or whatever it may be? It's like people are trying to divide everything so much, and it's so weird to me. I think that if we were all one culture, if someone didn't belong to that one culture, then they would have nowhere to go, and that sucks.
So this is a perfect final thing, right? So a lot of people who are considered to be traditional conservatives in the United States, who wave the American flag and are like, hey, we should all just be Americans and let's just all be one. This is basically what they're saying. Like, stop making these very subtle, distinct divisions between groups. We're all just part of a big culture. We're all part of one thing with these subtle differences. So let's do that. It just makes things worse. Gives us more reasons to dislike one another. Okay. All right, listen. Thanks, by the way. That's a cool answer. Nice question. Are we ready? Are we good? All right, man.